All right. As I anticipated, ISC is titled Alpha 4.0 Social Behavior. So what they're trying to do is communicate to players who may not want to shoot guns all the time, blow up ships, and blow up each other, what they may be doing in Pyro, I guess. And I don't know how everybody feels about that. I've heard people feel good, feel bad, but they also said that these areas were going to be very small and most of the Pyro was going to be lawless and full of craziness. So let's see what we got here. It's a 14-minute video, and hopefully they have a lot to say.
There's a lot you can say about the upcoming Pyro system. It's dangerous, obviously. It's lawless, certainly. But it's not all just chaos and carnage completely.
Okay.
It's also people just trying to make their living where they can in a place that's challenging and pretty different from the adjacent Stanton system. From repairing your neighbor's generator to supporting the nearby farmers, there's much you can do to be...
Does anyone else have a feeling that this is just narrative kind of bullshit from the NPCs in the location? But I'm curious how much of us how much we will be able to participate in this. This is a very intriguing episode from that standpoint, because they said, we're going to share with you the Citizens of Prosperity and the Headhunters gangs or whatever, right? So, but what does this mean for us? We kind of got to see. I'm curious. Very, very curious.
Be a social and upstanding citizen for Pyro's prosperity.
Well, this looks like the Headhunters. And it doesn't look like a social area, but let's see. Maybe it is. Pyro 3? I can't remember.
The planets of Pyro are different from Stanton in the fact that they all have to deal with the Pyro star system being at the end of its life cycle, emitting huge amounts of solar flare radiation, and we have to consider, what is that actually doing to each planet? Naturally, Pyro 1, closest to the sun, is going to be the heaviest influence of the solar flare firing off. So how do those people live? But the people furthest away from the star on Pyro 6 are going to have the least amount of radiation, but it's also going to be super cold at the same time. How do those people live instead?
Interesting.
In Stanton, you have huge landing zones.
So far, very NPC-driven conversation right now.
Which are very protected, very safe, lots of security.
But the moment we get base building, that narrative changes to us, right? So
Pyro, there's no such thing. You're very exposed to the danger. Everything is a lot more spread out. People aren't huddled into landing zones. They have the entirety of the system to roam across.
We're lucky.
There are no central sources of power in the Pyro star system. It's all decentralized, and each outpost has its own different identity and what it means for you as a player. As you go to these different places, should you be aligned with one faction, you can visit these locations. Should you align with a...
Okay. So now we're telling our story. Should you be aligned with one of these factions, you can go to these locations. Should you be aligned with another, you can go to theirs. So we can visit them, but there's restrictions on whether or not we can visit them. Why do we want to visit them? We still have quite a few minutes for them to tell us
another
that.
faction, you can go to these other locations instead.
You've got a lot more to do there. So instead of going down, doing a mission, flying away again, you can go down, do a mission, do another mission, do a third mission, and then go to another outpost on the same planet, do some missions there.
Did my dude just say you have a lot to do there and then said that you could just replay the same missions over and over again? I hope not.
Have a much more involved experience.
So let's look at some of the places you'll be visiting. So farmsteads are a small slice of life within the Pyro star system to get you introduced to what it's like.
Holy MFD on the Aurora. Whoa, and I am blocking the craziest one. Those are option menus. Those are menu option items placed on the MFD on the left side. That's crazy. And then on the right side, that is your old power. It's very readable. You do have to scroll, I would say is the unfortunate part, but there's obviously lots of components. I like it. I like it a lot. Zoom in. I don't think I can zoom in on a YouTube video, my dude. I mean, I could do this. For you. Right? There's your shields. Well, the blurry MFD maybe is because we're moving a little bit on the screen. And then there's your IFCS, G-Safe enabled, all this stuff. What is in Atmo? Atmosphere inside your ship, maybe? Right? Engineering would be my guess. Cool. Let me put myself here. Is there anything else we're missing? No? All right, back to the video.
Like to live there.
Landing complete.
There are places to gather harvestables.
I mean, we have this already.
Places to complete your missions. And ultimately, your first introduction to how people live in the Pyro star system.
Okay.
Farms are probably one of my favorite ones, just because I really like the vibe of them.
Is the closest thing to a home
Farms are
feeling
cool.
I think you'll find in Pyro. You feel like there's a smaller community living here.
There's a lot more fields of crops, there's a lot more greenhouses. For the lawless ones, we've got these like grub farm greenhouses, which are really cool as well. They tend to be in a lot more open, plain-like areas, big fields of crops around them.
There is things to do, there's things to harvest, but it's also just the vegetation that kind of sits on a lot of the desolate landscapes that we have in Pyro. Give you a little bit of this
Were those drugs?
mini
I'm not
feeling
sure.
of like a little oasis.
There's one in particular.
No wheat, yeah. But what do we do? What do we do? You know, like, yeah, I can go harvest those. But am I stealing from the...
On Pyro 2 that's really nice and has this really nice
All
vibe,
right.
that kind of like lazy wind.
Wait, they mentioned the stuff Max is doing? So, guys, just for reference, Elliot is saying let them cook. They're going to say what Max is doing. Guys, everything Max has touched is the most broken thing in the game. Max is the guy who does prison.
Mill circling in the breeze on a plain that's just like
love you, Max,
almost
but you know I
featureless
gotta give
apart
you
from
shit.
these few buildings on it. That really gives especially at sunset, like really gives an amazing vibe of like these people live in the ass end of nowhere but are really trying to do their best to survive.
There are going to be some goods that are only grown in Pyro because of its
Great guy,
unique
though,
star
Max,
system that can be shipped back to Stanton.
Yeah, it looks like drugs, because there were some drugs on the
We
table
have
there.
a whole bunch of new mission types that you'll be able to do there. Then they're more geared around repairing pieces of machinery. We have what we call charge drain technology coming over from Squadron, which enables you to transfer an electrical charge from one component to another. So you can like jumpstart a generator, for example.
Badass.
There's scope for much more gathering type of missions, like going out into the field, collecting crops. There's a big focus on non-combat at a place like a farm.
Okay.
Next, let's talk about scrapyards.
So you're going to be collecting crops for them for a mission. Interesting. I do like the charge and train stuff. It's kind of cool. And again, I think this is something I'm going to point back to over and over and over again, not just because he's here, because I think it really, really does represent what they're going for here with missions. And I think the community puts a lot more weight on missions than they should. Elliot said on SCL, the last time he was on SCL, was that missions are more for narrative. They're more to kind of like handhold you a little bit, teach the game to you, and lets you figure out what you're going to do in the sandbox of the game, right? And I really, really took that and like I'm holding on to that one because I think that's really, really true. So sure, we're going to be able to, grab crops for some other guys, some that, doesn't really mean anything to you, but it lets you know what you might be able to do at some point in the future. It's just up to CIG to actually deliver that to us, which how many people have confidence in that right now? Probably not too many, but hopefully. Right? Elliot says, so that's location repair, and we're doing end resource gathering. So I think location repair was in the monthly report, right? And obviously resource gathering has been talked about quite a bit over the last couple weeks. So very cool. I think we want to collect more than crops, but I think it's a very good start and very cool and something I'm looking forward to. I'll definitely do those missions, obviously. It's just, I'm tired of missions, if that makes sense. I know this is crazy because it's what we do, but yeah, I can't wait for us to have more agency over what we do, if that makes sense.
The scrapyards are one of the few locations within the Pyrostar system where you can actually service your ship.
But I like want what the NPCs have. Does that make sense? I keep wanting what the NPCs have. Look at what they get to build. Look at what they get to do. Look at what they get to live.
That is not on space stations or LEOs.
We'll have more scrap in a scrapyard, which makes a lot of sense. But we've got the towering cranes with derelict spaceships in there, the skeletons of spaceships being pulled apart.
And we can see that there is a certain order to things where things get disassembled and moved around, and where your aircrafts are getting refueled and repaired. There will be little shops as well to kind of get you on the way for your journey.
And we've got these large landing pits in all the scrapyards that are unique to the scrapyards, which are the big sort of sunken pits for repairing, rearming, refueling. They kind of bring that kind of unique, okay, this is a scrapyard because I know that there's a landing pit here, and they're the only types of outposts that have those. Landing.
It's beautiful. The whole place is beautiful. Oh my God, it's Mos Eisley, right? Like, it's so cool. But I cannot help myself but enrage with anger about this shit, because you have these fucking artists, guys. I love it. The art is so beautiful, but you have these artists and you have Jared saying that the visuals will not come first. It's a scrapyard. It's a scrapyard. Why can't I bring my scrap here? Why can't I bring a ship that I stole here to be scrapped? Why isn't there any infrastructure for gameplay whatsoever outside of a fucking landing pad? It's all just art assets placed around to look really cool, and it is absolutely amazing. It's absolutely amazing. God damn it, dude. Luke Presley is in chat. He literally talked about these 7 years ago, I feel like. It is so long ago, I can't even remember what year it was. But we're designing the locations to not participate in the gameplay that they should be participating in. Where do I bring my ship to scrap? Again, it is something so tiny to add. And maybe that's why they're okay with not doing it and waiting for the gameplay. That might make more sense, right? That's an argument. So I see some people like 100%, preach, whatever. Here's the opposite argument of that, and I'm going to argue against myself, is it's probably just a small landing pad or something like that that you would bring the ship to, right? And then it's something that they can add later very easily, but wouldn't it make more sense to add it later when the actual mission is being designed or the actual gameplay is being designed, right? Then they can make those changes to function with that gameplay better. Fine. But it would be a lot easier if you made a scrapyard and you made the scrapyard gameplay together. It's the thing that I've always been really critical about CIG about is, if you're going to make a scrapyard, prioritize your designers, your tech designer, all your people on making it a functional area, and then move on to the next one, right? But they don't do that. I'm going to go back because we have a Buccaneer. We have a Buccaneer HUD here. So let's take a look at that.
Fueling. They kind of bring that kind of unique, okay, this is a scrapyard because I know that there's a landing pit here, and
It's
they're the only
flickery.
types of outposts that.
That flickering does not look like a bug. That flickering does not look like a bug. It looks like it's on purpose, and I absolutely fucking hate
There's
it.
a landing pit here, and they're the only types of outposts that have those.
Landing complete.
Here, you're able to interact with Chrysler services, refuel your ship, repair your ship, even rearm your ship as well. In addition to servicing your ship, you can also service the scrapyard itself. You've got to use your charge and drain tools to be able to repair pipes, repair canisters, any faults in machinery, etc.
Cool.
It's very much about taking things apart
cool.
and organizing them and shipping them off again.
But unlike the landing zones within the Santon system, there is no air traffic controller. There is nobody to filter out
Did he say repair station?
where you can go. You simply choose a parking space, you land there, you service your ship, and you must fly out.
I want to hear what he said again.
The landing zones, machinery, etc.
It's very much about taking things apart and organizing them and shipping them off again.
But unlike the landing zones within the Santon system, there is no air traffic controller. There is nobody to filter out where you can go. You simply choose a parking space, you land there, you service your ship, and you must fly out.
Okay, it's like every other outpost we have in the game. Cool.
The new mission type that we have is salvaging, but in first person. So you don't need to be in a ship. It will be something that you can do on foot. So salvaging all the various panels which have turned up.
Okay, at first I was like, no, but now I'm like, yes, because you're at a scrapyard. You're scrapping.
At the scrapyards in order to process them.
It makes sense.
Another piece of non-combat gameplay at scrapyards might be repairing machinery. We have a system which uses the resource network and engages it in missions. So you will be able to, for example, if there's a broken piece of machinery, you will be able to find a working piece of machinery, rip components and fuses and parts out of that, apply it to the broken one, and make that run instead. But
Cool.
of course, you've broken the first machine by doing that.
Without any landing zones in the Pyro Star system, we're using scrapyards to be able to help service your ships so that you can navigate to other locations on the planet, as well as get back up into space as well.
Again, I can't stand them calling them scrapyards when the one thing we can't do is fucking scrap.
But
Like the ships. How many times have you stolen a ship and you want to do something with it and you just kind of leave it around? Also, just visually, what the fuck? That looks amazing. Can we look at that again?
our system, we're using scrapyards to be able to help service your ships so that you can navigate to other locations on the planet, as well as get back up into space as well. But the largest concentration of player activity is going to be happening at the trade posts. The trade posts are where the player is going to be dealing with trade and commodity, organizing themselves between different groups in order to purchase different food, water, ship weapons, ship components, armor, grenades, med pens, whatever, you name it. It can be
Bro, it's just some bullshit ass NPC
found
shop.
and sold here.
God
They
damn it.
focus quite heavily on hauling, delivery, and shuttling goods around.
Trade posts are organized by several different factions within the Parastar system. At these different locations, you might find different inventory, different perks, different goods. So if
Inventory, different perks. I'm just looking around just for any clues.
you're aligned with Citizens for Prosperity, you might visit locations such as Jackson Swap on Pyro 2 or Conard View on Pyro 6.
Okay.
Conard View is in a very cold location that's very inhospitable, but people still need to be able to service and trade and do things around this planet. You can find different goods, different resources there, all being sold at this location. As Conard View is sheltered within a crater, it is also a safer location away from other headhunter gangs nearby, so you've got fewer people competing for your wares or trying to pirate from you either. Jackson Swamp is sheltered between these two different cliff
They always communicate this game like it's something that it's not. Your wares? Like, what do we have?
buffs, offering them lots of protection.
They know something we don't. Like, we know they're, like, thinking about crafting. They must know something that we don't, right? They have to. They're not just pretending.
And through there, we went for a spaghetti western style main thoroughfare with lots of different landing pads around. And because it's well established, it's got some nice defensive measures so that it can't be immediately attacked by any rogue factions within Pyro.
We see in Jackson Swamp, it's a hard environment that these people live in. It's not an easy living.
Visually, it echoes like the rest of the sort of art style that we call the sort of frontier art style.
If we look at the buildings, we see that there's a lot of stucco elements, there's a lot of makeshift little knickknacks that people have gathered from around the...
Response to the Star Wars game, dude, we've walked around these locations already before that game was ever announced, so no.
The Pyro system.
It's a mixture of that hard scrabble life and people trying to make the best of what they have and repairing things over and over.
Max, I'm sorry, guys. Younga Games in chat is Max. Elliot definitely went over his desk and told him I was talking shit. I'm sorry, Max. Not everything I touch is broken.
Over again and like replacing things that break.
Most of it, yeah.
You can see that the way that people are living there, it's very makeshift.
It's all right, Max. You and every single Star Citizen developer.
Rooms were built to have a certain purpose, but have lost that purpose many years ago.
Thanks,
There's
Elliot.
still that sort of decorative, artisanal, craftsman-like elements in there as well, with the rough weave rugs and things like that. So we're trying to really like push that homesteading vibe, in complete opposition to things like the space stations and Microtech, which up to now has been this very corporate, lots of metal, lots of angles, lots of edges, lots of sci-fi. This is supposed to soften off all those corners.
You as a player can land whatever size ship you have, purchase whatever size ship components and ship weapons you might want to have. You can visit the local warehouse or order any potential things that you might need to have, commodities, food, etc. Where anybody needs to be able to get something, purchase it, collect it. This is where all the players are going to be collecting. But maybe you align yourself with headhunters and you visit locations like Gone of Steel and Golden Riviera. Gone of Steel is a smaller outlaw trade post perched in Pyro 4's massive crater. It's there as a stopgap between Pyro 3 and Pyro 6 because there is
Bro, why is somebody clacking their fucking keyboard in the back of this video?
not much landmass around Pyro 5. Pyro 5 is a gas giant, and yet you need to have a midway drop-off to get from Pyro 3 over to Pyro 6 on the far side, because Pyro's star system is far larger than Stanton. Golden Riviera is one of those sleazy towns which is just full of seedy people, absolutely taken over by the headhunters. They've butchered everything, they've changed how they want things to work. Trade posts are possibly selling slave pods and find other illegal goods, but it's just a central hub of like sleaziness.
Don't judge them.
It is still built out of this minimal things that are laying around. It's very a hodgepodge of different things that come together. What makes Golden Riviera different is that now a tornado just went through the entire place. It is absolute chaos. Bits and bobs are laying around. Things have rusted, and you will find mattresses of where people have been sleeping in the weirdest corners. We can see that the people that have been living in this space have really outlived this location a little bit.
The idea is that these are once prosperous outposts that have since been like basically home invaded by the bad guys and taken over completely. So we use a lot of more like fire and lots of spiked kind of like cladding and rusty metal elements just to give that kind of...
It's a lot of art and a lot of visual and not a lot of behavior and what we're going to be doing in the conversation today.
I hesitate to say Mad Max, but kind of that more apocalyptic vibe, I suppose.
Jackson Swamp, even though it is very improvised, it has a certain structure underneath it. And Golden Riviera just this structure is nearly gone. It is really
We're gonna let you cook, Max. I think they showed some of the stuff you were doing, but our expectation of what this video was going to say and show,
chaos, anarchy that this place really embodies.
Unfortunately, we're not seeing it.
The players coming to our locations should feel like they are encountering a whole new frontier where people feel a little bit on edge and they're curious about you, but they're also hesitant to meet you at the same time.
This summit is awesome.
There is no law, there is no jurisdiction, there is no protection. There is just you and people trying to get by and live their lives.
So, Armistice zones here?
So, what did we learn this week? Well, hopefully that there's
Max was not in the video.
a whole lot more to Pyro than just being a jerk and destroying everything you see and touch. That while all the systemic gameplay systems of Stanton can be found there, Pyro arrives with a few new ones of its own. And that at launch, there are two primary factions that currently dominate much of Pyro's planetside. And your choice of allegiance will determine much about where you'll go and what you'll do with your time there.
Okay, so Jared's ending here is really important to understand. I think I'm going to replay what he says so we stopped saying that they're lying and stop saying, like, the video is the problem, which is what most people are going to pay attention to. But let's listen to what Jared says here.
All the systemic gameplay systems of Stanton can be found there.
All the systemic gameplay systems from Stanton can be found there, which is most of what we saw in the video, right?
Pyro arrives with a few new ones of its own.
And all we're going to get in Pyro is a few new ones, initially, of its own. So those are the expectations that this man is setting out for you. So don't overextend your expectations beyond what he just said. And you're probably going to be very happy with what you hear, right? He sat out, he said it exactly, probably how it will end up being, minus a few bugs, I'm sure. And that's what it is. It's the entire breadth of the video, or actually more the lead up to the video from the same guy, kind of communicating that it's like, this is what you're going to do as a social player. And it was like, I think we were expecting something entirely different than we'd ever seen before. Maybe, at least that's what I was sort of thinking based on the way they communicated. But yeah, okay, my expectations are set.
And that at launch, there are two primary factions that currently dominate much of Pyro's planetside. And your choice of allegiance will determine much about where you'll go and what you'll do with your time there.
And that's interesting as well. Does it also determine what you buy there? Right?
And if you were asking yourself, hey, do these two factions ever fight? Well, I'd say come back in 2 weeks to see not only how much they don't like each other, but how they both have to contend with the ongoing presence of Xenothreat as their neighbors. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. Thanks for letting us share the people and process of game development with you. And we'll see you all here next week with a special Ship Showdown showcase look back at the work of superstar Gavin Rothery. He's so good.
Oh, sorry, I fell asleep at that part. All right, no middle ground or no ending credit thingy. So that was the episode. I would say I'm disappointed at the expectations that I created in my own head that weren't real. I thought social areas were just something that were new, different, something that we didn't have before. They're outposts. We basically just saw outposts that we'd already kind of seen in the Pyro playtest, but we haven't seen a lot of what we're going to do. So yeah, it was a lot of how it looks and stuff first. And maybe 4.0 will be delayed enough that they'll actually make another video of what we'll actually be doing. So Max said that I haven't even seen this video yet, so I missed any reference to your stuff. I don't know exactly what you're working on. They referenced like collection missions for farms, as well as the salvage missions at the outpost. I think the salvage missions at the outpost are so cool, and the charge and drain mechanics as well. A lot of that stuff is very, 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 very cool. But if you notice, I kept saying about the art because 80%, 90% of the video was art. And they had those little tidbits on those things that are probably still very much work in progress. Okay, so you're doing charge and drain. I saw a pipe that they made, and what else did we see? We saw them turn on like a bit of a power plant kind of thing at a farm, which is pretty cool. So there's some stuff there that's kind of neat, and we'll have to see. And I'm sure it's going to be a lot of fun. I think the highlight for me, surprise, surprise, I do love salvage, is at first I was like, I hate this. And then half a second later, I was like, you know what? It makes a lot of sense, is the handheld salvage at a salvage yard. Again, I will hammer this home 1,000 times. We should be taking our SRV and taking a ship that we stole, destroyed, soft death, whatever, and bring it to these and sell it to them. We have to be able to do that. And we as a community have communicated that as a priority for us for many, 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 many years. Why these locations weren't built around that specifically, I will always be confused by. But what I absolutely love is those little handheld salvage missions. It makes handheld salvaging a thing all of a sudden. It's kind of cool. So, nice.